Hello, Ken here from the Computer Clan, here today to add another episode to our rather popular Bit series. Today we are going to be talking about 32-bit versus 128-bit IP addresses, or more simply put, IPv4 versus IPv6. You've probably heard of some of these little initialisms before, but perhaps you don't know what exactly they are, or what the big deal is about version 6 anyway. But we're going to cover as much as we can today without making your brain implode. So let's take a look. So first of all, what is an IP address? Let's start simple. An IP address is used to provide identifications and locations for computers on a network. Just like your house has an address for mail, basically, or if you want to tell your friend how to get to your house, you give them an address. Well, for traffic traveling through the internet, they need to know where to go to. They're not just going to go to Ken's Mac. You know, that name could be used by a billion different people that are named Ken, although there's probably not a billion people named Ken in the world. But basically, names don't work so well for computers. We use names for websites and things like that, like URLs, so we can remember them better. But for computers, they like to use numbers. So currently, we are using version 4 of this Internet Protocol standard. As of now, in the lovely year of 2014, IPv4 is responsible for routing most of the web's traffic. So, Internet Protocol version 4, or IPv4, uses what's called 32-bit addressing. 32-bit addressing means we can take about 4 billion values into account. Just like with a 32-bit operating system, that system can address about 4 billion bytes of RAM, for example, which is about 4 gigabytes. That same number applies in this context, but instead of memory management, it has to do with address permutations. Specifically, 32-bit addressing can support 4,294,967,296 different address permutations. That's 2 to the 32nd power. So if you multiply 2 by itself 32 times, you get that number. And that's where we get 32-bit addressing from. It's just a shorter way of writing that big number. If you say 32-bit to someone who knows this stuff, they'll know that's just basically let's just call it a shorthand for this big number of addressing. And the way IPv4 is formatted is 4 different groups of numbers that can range from 0 to 255. That provides us with 256 different numbers we can make per group. So for example, below we have 4 groups of numbers. This is a standard IPv4 address. 67, 80, 87, 192, and there would be decimals in between if you actually needed to type this into some console. But we can have a whole bunch of different permutations, really. Like I said earlier, each group can start at 0 and range up to 255. Each group can have one of 256 different values. In fact, if you take 256 and raise it to the 4th power, that will get you the same number as 2 to the 32nd power. Again, it's just a different way of referencing 32-bit addressing. They both equal the same number, which is approximately 4 billion. So if we have this IPv4 and it routes most of the web's traffic and it supports billions of addresses, I mean, that's a big number. Why do we need a new version of the Internet Protocol? What is the point of this? Are we wasting time? No, we're not at all, really. There's a couple of reasons, and I'll cover a few, but the biggest one is because of IP exhaustion. Simply put, we need more addresses. We're running out. In fact, some systems are using the IPv6 standard. And, like I said earlier, a lot are still using the IPv4 standard. In fact, if you logged onto your router, you'd probably see an IPv4 formatted address. But we're moving to IPv6. And as the years go on, we're going to really start using this because we're running out of permutations. Remember, there's only about 4 billion permutations that 32-bit addressing can support. so we need more. In addition, IPv6 offers a lot of other tweaks that help the protocol perform more actions automatically, and overall it's more efficient, and security is also kept in mind while developing this protocol. So there's a lot of nice benefits to IPv6, but to keep this presentation rather simple, we're just going to focus on the big one, and that is the addressing. So let's take a look at IPv6. So if you thought that 4 billion number was big, well, that number is about to be dwarfed drastically. IPv6 uses 128-bit addressing. So some people may think, well, 128 is only 4 times bigger than 32. What's the big deal? Well, since we're working with exponents, we're actually working with a ginormous number now. Written in scientific notation, and this is a dumbed down scientific notation, it's only an approximation, 128-bit addressing can support 3.4 times 10 to the 38th addresses. That's 2 to the 128th power. If you want to read the full number, that's the full number of IP permutations that IPv6 can support. If you want to give this number a cool name, you can say it's approximately 340 undecillion permutations of addresses. Holy crap. Isn't that a lot? Way more than 4 billion. So since IPv6 can support all these new address permutations, we need a new way of writing it. Instead of having those 4 small groups with little decimals in between, we actually have this newer system down below that has a lot more groups with colons instead of decimals. We can range from 8 groups of 4 digits of zeros all the way to 8 groups of 4 digits of Fs. Now wait a minute. Why are there letters here? Some may not know this. I'd be glad to explain it as simply as I can here. Yeah, what the F? Why are there letters in my IP address? It's known as hexadecimal, and we use it because 0 through 9, our regular numbers that we use, that only gives us 10 values. 0 through F, however, take 0 through 9 and then A, B, C, D, E, F, that gives us 16. That makes the addresses easier to write. So let's take a look at an example here. This is an IPv6 address of all zeros. If we take one digit, 0 through F, that provides us 16 different values. So there could be a 1 there, there could be a 9 there, there could be an F there. There are 16 different possible digits that can go in that spot. And then we have 4 digits in this group. That's where we get our 16 to the 4th power. You take 16 and multiply it by itself 4 times, and that takes care of one group. But then if you take that quantity and multiply it by 8, which is the number of total groups we can have, that is what equals that approximate 340 undecillion. And if you don't believe me, you can go into a very sophisticated calculator, maybe Wolfram Alpha, for example, and actually type in 16 to the 4th quantity to the 8th power, and you will get that big number we discussed earlier. To reiterate, we get 16, 4, and 8 because of our numbers in the address here. 16 values per digit, 4 digits per group, and 8 groups per address. That's how the math works out there. Well, gee, Ken, that's a lot of digits. Do we have to write them down all the time? Well, there are a couple different ways of writing this, and I believe the actual standard of how this is notated is still under development last time I checked, but a rather common way is this. We'll keep it simple for this presentation. If you have an address that ends in consecutive groups of zeros, in fact, consecutive groups of zeros anywhere in the address, they can be omitted with this double colon rule. Pretty simple. Leading zeros can also be removed. So let's take a look at another simple example. If we take these consecutive groups of zeros out, and in the one group with the number 1 in it, if we take those leading zeros out, technically this big address can be simplified with : 1. So that is a general look at the IPv6 address format. And overall, that's a quick overview of 32-bit versus 128-bit IP addresses, or IPv4 versus IPv6. Now, I kept this presentation rather simple because that's what I'm known for doing to make it teachable. But if anyone is willing to throw in some more information in the comments below, feel free to do that. And if anyone has any comments about what I discussed, feel free to add them in. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if I can't answer them, I'm sure someone will come along that is way smarter than me that will help you figure out your questions. So, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you learned something. And I will see you next time. If you wish to stay updated with Computer Clan uploads, smash that subscribe button and hit that like button if you liked the video. Want to get a behind the scenes look at the Computer Clan? Feel free to sign up on our CC Backstage forum. And if you wish to see more content from us, visit us on thecomputerclan.com.